right now, we have I have a company called PassiveInvesting.com. It's a private equity real estate firm, and we acquire large apartments primarily in the Carolinas, but we do have a few acquisitions in Texas as well as Tennessee. But I'm located in Columbia, South Carolina, and one of the main reasons why I got into this acquiring real estate was really from the tax side of things. So it really wasn't necessarily because I wanted cash flow. Obviously, that's obviously nice, but the main reason was from the tax benefit. So kind of going back a little bit of where I came from to get to this point. I'm a chiropractor by trade. And when I was in chiropractic school, I started my very first company called shopanatomical.com. And we actually sell all types of skeletons and skulls and brains and hearts and all kinds of plastic models that, doctors and universities and labs and things like that need to be able to study off of, but also to teach patients on. And so when I was in chiropractic college, my first quarter that was in chiropractic college, all the students were complaining about how pricey. It was actually listed at $189.95 for the spine model that was in the bookstore, which we all know in bookstores at these colleges, they always puff up the prices, right? It's always way too expensive. And so I went to the bookstore, looked up on the box, who the manufacturer was, found one of their distributors online, reached out to them, which, kind of today is actually that distributor is one of my largest competitors, which is kind of cool. But I reached out to them and I said, hey, what could you do if I can get an order of 20 of these spine models? What kind of price could you give me? And they said, we can sell it to you for $65. And that would include shipping. And so I was like, well, this is great. So I was like, I don't want to price gouge my friends. I'm just, trying to get a good deal for these guys. But I was like, I'll mark it up by $4.95, like $5, right? So I sold it for $69.95.
You're
put
way
order
too
forms
kind.
Together. Say again?
I said, you're way too kind. $5. I was expecting at least to go to like 100.
I know. The story gets better though. So it went from just like a couple $100 because for the first week I put the order forms together and everything. And these are, of course, like broke college students, like most people in college, right? And so I didn't want to take a bunch of IOUs and things like that from these students. So I was like, here's an order form. You can pay me a cash check. Here's a link to PayPal if you want to pay me that way, if you want the credit card. And so by the end of that first week, I had 80 orders of these spines with cash up front. And I was like, wait a minute. What if I can go outside of trying to go to the distributor, just go straight to the manufacturer? So I did. So I reached out to the manufacturer and said, hey, I got this order. I want to place an order of 80 spines. What can you do for me on the price? And they said, we'll sell it to you for $42.48. And I'll never forget that, of course, because it was a game changer, right? $42.48. And that'll also include free shipping. And I was like, that's sweet, right?
Yeah.
So I did that the first week. And then 2 weeks later, sold another 40 spines. And then because I was able to order so much quantity, the manufacturer said, hey, well, do you want to just become one of our dealers? And so I became one of their dealers, got access to all 2,000 plus of their products. And then since then, I've built out a website and we sell stuff all over the country and all around the world. And we do 7 figures of revenue every year with that. But that business that I first got started with helped me get my first chiropractic clinic started as well. So I started that first clinic, didn't have to take on any debt. And fast forward to today, I actually have converted those chiropractic clinics to really medical clinics. They're non-surgical orthopedic specialty medical clinics. We have medical doctors, nurse practitioners, and a team of about 50 employees that work with us on that team and allows us to be able to expand. Being able to convert it from chiropractic to the medical allowed us to be able to reduce the footprint of the clinics, and it allowed us to be able to expand from 1 clinics to 4 clinics. We now have 4, one here in Columbia, South Carolina, where I'm at, one in Charleston, Greenville, South Carolina, and North Augusta. And so obviously, having those businesses and all of them are debt free, you're obviously making some cash off of those. And so I, instead of having to pay the money to the government, started investing inside of real estate, and that's where we are today.
I love it. So can you take us through, because I think, one, it's a fantastic story, but one thing that I love about people is that most stories I hear, and I'm assuming yours is going to be somewhat the same, is that, we always tell the story and it sounds like everything goes very quickly. But I'm sure those early years, things didn't just shoot up to, a clinic overnight. How was it, being in, whatever school you were in and building this business probably on the side? I'm assuming you've finished school. You didn't say, but I'm assuming you finished school. So how was it building this thing on the side? How long did it take you to really make it into, a real business that got up to, 7 figures a year in revenue? And then, what was it from the first one to the second clinic and so on and so forth?
Sure. So in the very beginning with the Shop Anatomical, I remember in college, in chiropractic college, actually going, I would purposely schedule my classes so that I would be able to get to the school early in the morning. I go to the cafeteria and I start to build out the website, build out the database, because I one of the things I had some experience in was actually doing that aspect. And so instead, I didn't have any money to hire somebody to do that, so I just started doing it on my own. And when so I'd go to the classes early, 7:00 in the morning is usually my first class was. I'd get to the cafeteria when it opened at like 5. So I'd sit from like 5 to 7 and just get, work done. And then in between classes or on breaks, instead of going out in the hallways and chattering with friends and things like that, another reason why I got in at the early class is because I would park my car on the front row. So that when in between classes, I can just go jump into my car. And it was an SUV. It was a Mercury Mariner, silver Mercury Mariner SUV.
That's a throwback.
Oh yeah. And I found online a laptop stand that would attach to the passenger seat. Mm-hmm. So I installed a laptop stand, and on the right side, I would in between classes, I'd go in there and I would process customer orders. I would take phone calls, respond to requests, all that kind of stuff. And then so that was one of the biggest things I did in the beginning was I just bootstrapped it, just did it on my own, and started originally selling things on eBay at that time, because eBay was really big back then.
When was this, by the way? What year?
Say again?
What year was this?
I think you're going to ask me what eBay was, because
no.
It is. No.
No, I know what eBay is. What year is this?
No, that was 2007, 2008 when that happened. Great. So, I mean, if for those of you who don't remember, that's actually the year the iPhone was invented. I mean, the first iPhone was 2008. So, I mean, it's amazing when you think about the iPhone these days, and that's like the only thing a lot of people have, and they think of, oh, I've always had that. It's a fairly young technology.
Yeah. No, I think that's awesome. And then obviously, built it up, I'm sure, several years. When did it get to the position of, hey, I'm getting absolutely murdered in taxes. I've got to figure something else out. Again, what year was that for timeline, and what was that process like for you? And, how did you go about, deciding real estate was an avenue you were going to explore and ultimately put some money into?
Yeah. I mean, it didn't. So the Shop Anatomical business started out selling, 5, 10, 15,000 a month. Then it started just kind of grow month after month. And I would say by the end of the second year is when we were at the point of being over 7 figures of revenue. So the first year was probably maybe $500,000. The second year got over $1 million in revenue. And from that point, at that point, I mean, I'm in chiropractic college. Like, I'm not even thinking about taxes. I got to write a few checks here and there and things like that. And yeah, I would say even then, if I would have known what I know now, I would be in a better position where I am now. Not that I'm in a bad position now, but I'd be even better, right?
Sure.
Because there were so many times then that if I actually thought that I could actually knew about the ability of investing in real estate, because my whole thought was make money from the business, take out what I need to live, and then the rest of it just pour back into growing the business. And that's how I've made a lot of my businesses successful is I don't take a lot of money off of them. I actually pour them back into growing that business, continuing to build it. And so once I graduated chiropractic college, of course, that business continued to allow me to be able to open up my first clinic without having to take on any debt, which again, when I look at it now, I'm like, I probably should have taken on some debt, because I would, again, when you factor in leverage and the amount of money that you can actually, keep or whatever, it's sometimes a lot better to do that. But I mean, it has definitely allowed us to be able to grow and to just pour that money back into the business as we've made profits, because we don't have any debt service on the property, but on the actual businesses themselves. But then my wife is the one who primarily does all of our bookkeeping for the businesses as well as us financially, especially in the beginning. Now we have a full-time staff accountant that manages our accounts and books and things like that. But at that time, we were just every quarter we would have to write, larger and larger checks. And my wife finally, she would come to me all the time and she'd be like, "Why are we having to keep on writing larger and larger checks?" And I'm like, well, dear, this is a good thing, because the larger checks you have to write to the government means you're making more money, right? Mm-hmm. And so I always just looked at it as a good thing, right? Like if I have to pay more in taxes, that's okay, because I'm making more money. And it was finally that she was just, we started, when the check started getting over a six figures in every quarter, that's when it was just like, wait a minute, I got to sit back here and try to figure out how can I keep more of this money so I can continue to grow this portfolio and of businesses, but also, trying to look at other assets like real estate to be able to help offset some of those taxes.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. I think as anybody continues to grow and a larger percentage and also larger dollars starts funneling out to, straight out of your pocket into things, that have no direct impact on your life, you start to think, why am I doing this and how can I change things? And I think that's where a lot of people, especially later on in life or after they've built up something successful, that's how they kind of find their feet into the real estate game. And, really it's that tax side of things. I've been surprised at the number of people that I hear, just how you said, they said, I bought real estate because I was just making money in so many other ways. I didn't even care if these deals made money in the future. It was really just to stop paying money to somebody else that wasn't going directly to me. And it's such, from somebody that's not in the investment world or in the business world and hasn't been around larger sums of money, it just seems like such a counterintuitive measure. Why would I put money into something that's not making me more money? And it's just it's a net game, and what's going to ultimately net you the most. And let's also call a spade. Anybody investing in an equity position in some form of real estate, unless they're just crazy over leveraged or we get smoked in a recession, you're probably not losing money. Even though you're getting paper losses today, you're probably doing okay, if not great. So it does grow with you over time. So I think it makes a ton of sense. And I'm sure that avenue of research is ultimately what led you to looking into, some form of real estate and ultimately into the multifamily space. Is that right?
That's right. Because the biggest thing is I didn't think I could actually scale enough with buying some of the smaller assets, whether it be a smaller multifamily or even just a single family home or a portfolio of single family rentals. I didn't feel like I had the scale in order to be able to take down enough properties to be able to really affect a large amount of my taxable basis. And so being able to go after these larger assets, I can invest a lot more money into multiple units, obviously, and it allows me to be able to reduce that taxable liability quite a bit, especially when you start to talk about doing cost segregation, which a lot of times on smaller assets, it just doesn't make it feasible.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask a question, because it's something we've spoken about, John and I, a lot with other people, and it's the route of taking on investors or not taking on investors. And it's always a pretty interesting conversation between the two of us and with other people, because we see both sides of the coin, right? We obviously, just like you, raise money from investors for these properties that we co-invest alongside with. But we've also done deals without investors or with only a handful, or something on our own. And there's pros and cons to both. What was the reason, or did you start off with no investors? What was the reason you decided to not just buy properties for yourself or with a small group of people and be the sole owner and eventually, expand into the, the hundreds of millions and the thousands of units that you guys have bought today?
Sure. I would say that there's two main reasons. So the first one I would say is the fact that I wanted to make sure that I could diversify my own investments into these larger assets, which are typically a lot safer investments than you would if you just bought one on your own. Mm-hmm. And I guess I would say there's a third level of reason too. So that would be the first reason. The second reason I would say is that I have a lot of people in my network. And of course, since I started the company, I have a lot more people in my network that were like me. Right? They had a successful business. They were in a successful job, whatever the case may be, but they didn't have the time to be able to focus on trying to invest in real estate to be able to have any effect on any of their investments. So they were just doing what most people do, and they just throw it in some form of a REIT or a hedge fund, or maybe they even throw it into an index or ETF or something like that, or just have just have their investment advisor manage their portfolio, but they really have no control over it because they just don't have enough time to research it. And then of course they have this kind of fear of missing out, if you will, on investing in real estate because they see their friends doing it or whatever. And they just don't have the time, right? They're busy, they're married, they have a family, and they got this job, and they can't take that time away to be able to do it. And that's kind of where I was really, because I had this successful business, but I didn't have the time to be able to focus on investing that money that I was making into real estate. And so for me, I made a cold turkey decision to just, on a Friday, I made a decision after I was at an event hearing a speaker talk about being the general in your business, to that I was going to step out and I was going to promote my COO at the time, who is now our CEO. He's been the CEO now for going on 3 years.
Mhm.
I wanted him to be able to take over the business so I could step out completely. So I made that decision on a Friday. Monday, I discussed it with him. Tuesday, I made an announcement to my staff, and I haven't been back in the clinic since I made that announcement to the staff. And I have taken all of my efforts and fully focused it on real estate. And I know a lot of people can't do that. And there's a lot of people that don't really want to do that, right? There's a lot of people that are like, they see how much of a challenge and how difficult, even though people try to make it out to being like an easy thing, like this multifamily game is easy, which to me, all the different pieces in and of themselves, I would say are somewhat easy, but it's the multitude of all the different tasks and things that you have to do all at the same time, which makes it complex and difficult, right? And so they see that how difficult it is and all these different moving parts that they have to have, and they just throw their hands up and go, forget it. Here's my money. You invested for me, right?
Mhm.
And that's really kind of the main focus. And then I would say the third main reason why that I wanted to be able to bring on other investors is that, and you probably know what I'm going to say when I say this, Chris, and you as well, John, is that when you have other investors that you are accountable to, it makes you better in making decisions on the investment. Because to me, I can sleep well at night if I lose my own money, but if I lose somebody else's money, I have a hard time doing that. And people ask me all the time, because we, even just in the last 12 months, we raised over $50 million for our acquisitions on the equity side. And this is a ton of money, right? This is a lot. And this isn't just from one large check. I mean, this is with over probably 350 investors in these acquisitions with this 50 million in equity. And they ask me a lot of times, they're like, well, how do you sleep well at night when you're controlling and have that much equity? I'm like, because we put our investors in really good, high quality assets. And I have to be able to do that in order to sleep well at night. I'm also obviously putting my own money into it, but it's a lot harder to sleep at night when you are putting other people's money at risk if you feel like you're not putting them in the right investment. So to me, it kind of sharpens me and making sure that our group places capital, not only our own, but other people's capital into great quality assets.